Hey, thanks everyone for joining and taking some of your time. So we would like to speak about enhancing student engagement and efficacy in sciences. And we are here today to specifically talk about active learning through guided inquiry with collaborative group activities on Lrnr. Um, so a quick agenda is we'll talk about some of the quick facts about Lrnr, and then I'll hand it off to Dr. Murray, who's been a pioneer in active learning in A&P for the last several decades. I think we also have our other partner, Dr. Ronald Jerritz, is one of the audience. He's also another co-author to this project. And then hopefully, if you have some time, we'll show you a sneak preview, and then we'll start answering some of the questions that you have. So who's Lrnr? We started as a social impact company with a mission to democratize the cost of course solutions. Because the biggest challenge I saw, I'm part of Pearson. I used to be part of Pearson and no longer part of Pearson, obviously. The biggest challenge I saw was costs. And again, OpenStack started addressing those. But the other challenge that I did see is that publisher solutions do provide homework, classroom engagement tools, and a lot of content, formative content that goes with the textbook. And we saw that to be a real opportunity to bridge that gap for instructors that want to actually adopt OpenEd or OpenStack's textbooks. And so we're 100% aligned to OpenStack's. We do not do anything else but OER. And our contribution to this OER revolution is, building personalized courseware, homework solutions, and classroom engagement aligned to OpenEd and OpenStack's. Our future is we hope to have inclusive library of personalized courseware by 2025 for all these STEM 100 and 300 level courses for $80 per year. So we build custom courses that align to your pedagogy and syllabus. So every single course we build is customized to your syllabus. We have formative content. There's questions, activities that are built from scratch. We build all of our banks from the ground up. And again, all of these banks are typically built by authors like yourself. So instructors with a lot of experience building questions, high quality questions that are usually at a high level of Bloom's. We integrate with all the major LMSs. We have a 2-week trial for students to make sure that every single student gets access at the beginning of the first day of class. We have excellent customer support, and we also have a Lrnr Give Back program. It means instructors identify poor students in your classes, and typically 5 to 10% of the students get free access from Lrnr. So we really want to make it accessible for students. Most of our courses are priced $20 to $40. Our library model is also $40. So some of the departments that have adopted Lrnr across the entire biology department, they only pay $40 per student. And these are all the courses that we have, and we have more to come. We are ADA compliant, and we have a lot of support. We recently, again, did a review to make sure that we're ADA compliant across the board. So you won't have an issue with some of the students who have learning challenges to work on our platform. So some of the quick stats here. These are all stats about different courses that we have. Most of the courses that we've built recently have been through grant programs. So typically you'll be working with CUNY or some other system like the Minnesota system before that for A&P labs. And we've built a lot of activities, a lot of virtual lab experiments. In A&P specifically, we've done things in 3D, we've done things with cadavers, we've done things with physical models, histological slides, and so on. We've also enhanced the OpenStack's textbook. We've added 83 new topics that are not existent in the textbook. We also have created a supplemental lab to that, and some stuff on human biology. So we built live polling and lecture slides because we thought that was a missing gap because we only had homework solutions before. And we started building student engagement tools so that instructors, without changing the price points for the students, right? For the exact same price, we wanted to add more stuff or more abilities of to enable instructors to able to interact with their students and get real-time engagement and real-time efficacy of the students. So when this happened, we realized that, okay, live polling is great. I mean, there's other companies like Kahoot, Top Hat, they all do that. Uh, but how do we do it better? So we start saying, okay, rather than just giving a tool, why don't we give all these pre-built activities that we already have as part of the solution? So rather than you trying to take the time to create all these activities that engage students, we wanted to kind of make it, embedded activities in there. And that's when I met Dr. Ron and Dr. Murray during many HAPS conferences, and we kind of started talking. And I learned that these guys are like amazing and pioneers at um, guided inquiry, and they actually do this today in their classes, in their classrooms. And we were super excited, and we started saying that, okay, is there a way that we can partner and try to build these pre-built group activities on Lrnr, and they being the authors, and they know this stuff inside out. So without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Dr. Murray. And Dr. Murray, you can go ahead.
All right, thank you, Arvind. So I'm Murray Jensen, and I'm at the University of Minnesota. And I have to admit, I'm closer to 40 years in the classroom than 30. And here's the other thing. I absolutely love teaching and learning, especially the classroom. That's where, I really kind of enjoy interacting with students. But over the past, 20 years or so, I've been creating in-class activities, guided inquiry activities. And some of you know the term POGL. I do work with the POGL organization, but these do not have the process skills. These are just simply guided inquiry activities. And my partner, Ron Garretts, is in attendance too, so he might chime in after a while. But everything I do in the classroom is based on the learning theory called constructivism. And the person at the top left of the screen or in the middle of the screen is Lev Vygotsky. And he is the founder of social constructivist learning theory. But the learning theory is based on students' conceptual learning. And conceptual learning is different than factual learning. And in anatomy, we especially have kind of a lot of facts. We have a lot of bones, we have a lot of muscles, we have many details to learn. And I have found that conceptual learning is more enjoyable for the classroom. And a concept is used to describe, control, and predict and explain events in nature. And the concepts of physiology have been explored by Joel Michael and his group. So if you want to go after what are the concepts in physiology, I recommend looking up Joel and his team. The concepts in anatomy aren't so well defined, but the one that is defined is probably barriers. And we're going to be looking at an activity involving barriers in just a second. But a good learning experience is happening in your classroom when students are engaged in conversation. This is just kind of the opposite of lecture. When you are lecturing, you have control of the room and you are dictating what students hear. But when you give control to students and student groups, then it's much more messy. It's not as controlled, and listening to students is going to be kind of a food fight in effect, and that it's just a lot of ideas floating around. But good discussion leads to learning. That's the basis of conceptual learning. Guided inquiry is a type of curriculum that promotes good discussion. So that's part of our job. Ron and I have put together a lot of activities that to guide the instructor or guide the discussion of students. The next slide I'm looking at here, and the slides are really small for me, but I'm making the best. So in my classroom, I want students to engage in doubt. I don't want them to be confused. I want them to have doubts. And what we're going to look at here in just a second is an activity that gets them to doubt about the role of barriers in their body, and more specifically, what divides the inside and outside of your body. But confusion sometimes happens in the classroom, and that's when students just don't know what's going on, and it leads to students giving up. But doubt, you know that you are having a good classroom session when students lean in and kind of turn their head, and good teachers, instructors who know, kind of when students are learning, that's when it gets good. That's when the clock goes too fast and the end of the hour happens and you go, oh no, I wish we had 20 more minutes. But that's what happens in a good guided inquiry classroom. Let's go on to the next screen. So this is an example screen or a model of inside and outside your body. And this is an activity that I use on the first day of class. And most of you would probably agree with this. When a student thinks about, food in their stomach, they think food is inside their body when it's in their stomach. But from a physiological point of view, we know that no, there's a barrier there. There's just a tube. We are a tube within a tube. And when a substance, when food stuff is in that tube, it is still technically outside the body. And so when we have students engage in this activity, they have to kind of confront the idea that there's the food in your intestines, the food, in your stomach. It's really not in your body. And there's doubt. It's just like, what? And they look at this diagram. They look at this diagram that you see on the right, and they can follow a line through through the GI tract, and it never enters the body. And so, through learning, tools, through the curriculum we have developed, they can engage in an activity where they figure things out. And I like that term, figure things out. They're figuring out that there is a barrier between the inside and the outside of the body that's not just their skin. And at the bottom of that screen, we moved on. When students are engaged in these activities, we have specific group roles. Go on to the next screen, Arvin, that's good. But the student roles that we have in these small groups include reporter, writer, director, journalist, but these roles are given to students so that they know what they do. And this is the basis of kind of cooperative group learning. And I was fortunate enough to have David and Roger Johnson as my mentors many years ago. And they're kind of the pioneers of cooperative group learning. But they tell you kind of what do you have to do to set up a small cooperative group. And what we're trying to do with Lrnr and our new software is move away from paper and pencil materials and move it online, still in the classroom, but still maintain these group roles. But currently, I use a big, thick study guide. This is 400 pages of study guide, and this is the material that I require my students to give out or to purchase at the bookstore. But this contains about 20 years of work of developing curriculum, of developing activities for students to engage in to learn the concepts of human physiology. But I would like to get rid of this. Just like many others, I would like to make my classroom paperless. But up till now, I have to admit that I haven't found anything that begins to replace the paper and pencil. But working with Arvind and the Lrnr group, Ron and I are trying to develop a software package where the guided inquiry materials, the paper and pencil materials are moved online. We still want this face-to-face. I am not giving up my classroom. I have done online learning with COVID and no fun, not for me. I need the classroom, and I'm a strong believer in students need the classroom too. For their own mental health, they need to be with other students. And it works best if they're talking with other students. And so, I still have face-to-face interaction, but we are now incorporating devices such as mobile devices and tablets and computers, which they already have. They have these things. But in the classroom, they're using, unfortunately, these things to update their social status or watch a soccer game or whatever. But, often they are not engaged in our PowerPoint slides. But I would like them to be engaged in these group learning activities. But the GILGA, as we're calling it, guided inquiry learning using group activities, is going to enable us to get rid of the paper and pencil and we are going to move things online. Let's move to the next slide, Arvin. Okay, so this shows the inside and the outside, model again on both a laptop, a tablet, and a computer screen. And part of the activity is to look at this model and draw a line through the GI tract. And when they do this, they are able to kind of trace, or online, they're able to use a drawing tool and trace the path. And by doing this, they're able to kind of see, okay, where did the food go from the outside of the body to the inside of the body? And I like that phrase, and doubt and what's going on here. And you can see on here, there's a line, and the students are going to draw this line, and the instructor at the instructor station is actually going to see everybody's activities, and they're going to be able to kind of monitor student responses. And when students type answers, they're going to be able to go in and see who's making progress. And so there's a big monitoring component of this too. And so when students are engaged in this, those roles of reporter and recorder, they're going to be rotated between students. So as they move through this, they answer a question, and then they all must kind of come to a consensus. And after they record an answer, they're going to actually kind of press a confidence level. They're going to have a series of faces at the bottom that says, how confident are we sure this is right? Are we very confident? Are we moderately confident? And that confidence level is also recorded as students move through the activity. But as they do this activity, they begin to learn the roles of barriers, within the body, and they learn weird things like, the oxygen in your lungs is technically outside the body, which can help with external versus internal respiration. But they also learn how to engage in group activities. They learn, hey, I can speak up in class. I can express an opinion. I can contribute to an academic discussion. And that's really a part of my classroom. I want students to begin to learn to interact with each other in intelligent ways. I'm looking at the next screen. What am I seeing there? I'm really seeing a small screen, but that's okay. These are a screen of different groups. So we have typically 3 or 4 people per group, and we just have group A, group B, group C, and behind each of those is 3, 4, or maybe even 5 students. I think we limit it to 5, maybe 6 students, but that's probably the maximum group size you want. But 2 students to 6 students, and we have roles for everybody, and they all engage in these activities. And while they are looking at their tablets, their laptops, or their mobile devices, they also are talking to each other, and they need each other to complete the activity. And so they are resource dependent on each other. Let's go to the next screen. Okay, this is the last screen that we have, and this is the screen which the instructor sees at their station or on their tablet, and it shows the progress of each group. And so we have groups, A through J for a large classroom. And behind each group, is 3, 4, 5 students. And by looking at this screen, an instructor can kind of know, okay, group A, they're already on question 5. And I see they've got a couple questions, that's the green, they're doing well. We've got one orange, they're having a little bit of problem with that one. But then I'm looking way down at group I, and it's just like they goofed up the first question, that's a red dot, and they're only on the second one. Maybe I should go check in with group I. That's a group that needs me right now. But the instructor in the active learning classroom, I don't want them glued to the instructor or the teaching stand. I want them walking around. So if they have a tablet or a phone in their hand, they get information as to what group needs me right now. And so they can go over and check in on that group. But a big part of being an active learning instructor is just sitting and listening to the conversation students have. And my students are used to it. A lot of times if you come over and sit with a group, they're just going to look at you and say, well, what do you want? Or, but students get used to me just coming in and spying on them or listening in on them. And with this device, it's another way to kind of check in and get some data to find out, hey, who is really needing my help right now? Do we have another slide here? We're getting close to the Q&A, which is what I want. This is the part of the presentation that gets fun. But most of you, or many of you, kind of know Ron and I through HAPS, and we know that we do active learning all the time, and we are trying to help people come up with alternatives to lecture. And now I'm trying to come up with an alternative to a big handout packet. And with Arvind and the programming team at Lrnr, I hope we can come up with a good software solution and where we can implement active learning in the classroom. Okay, and with that, Arvind, what else do you want to say right here?
Well, yeah, thanks a lot for that, Dr. Murray. And I think we have like a live demo where we have some of our team members joining as students. They've already joined in as students. And I also have joined in as a student where I'm setting up my confidence level. So I am the reporter, which means that the reporter can read the question. The writer does not see the question. So you kind of have to communicate. And like Dr. Murray, you were saying, talking about how do you address students? And so when you form these groups, one of the biggest challenges that I thought, and we discussed this before, was if you have a lot of introverts, right, and you have a power dynamic in the group, and typically in the paper pencil world, you basically make one person the reporter or the writer, and and we discussed this that in the online world we can keep swapping those roles, so we are forcing students who are uncomfortable talking, to start communicating and collaborating with other students. Do you have any comments on that?
Oh, absolutely. And so, everybody knows there's power dynamics in the classroom, and as an older white guy, I can walk into the classroom and everybody knows I'm the instructor. But when students are looking at each other, they're typically close to the same age. And there's some personalities that are bigger than others, and some people talk more than they should. But more likely, what I've encountered, there's people that should talk more and don't. They're smart students, but they're just shy. But we've kind of arranged the software now so that everybody has to contribute. It kind of puts the owner, what's the word there? But it makes people talk, so they don't really have the choice to hide. They have to speak up. But we also have to kind of deal with the rotation of roles, which we are doing, and then making sure students get the right answer. But hopefully this software will help the shyer students in the classroom speak up.
Yeah. I think I'm just showing you, two different students here. One is a reporter, and this time, the reporter actually gets to read the question. So essentially, the other students don't have an idea of, or they have no clue on what the question is. So they're like looking at the screen, their own screens, and they're saying, I don't see the question. So the reporter has to read it out, loud, saying that, okay, this is the question. And then the writer is the one that actually answers the question. So you kind of have that group dynamic again, where there's a discussion going on. And we're trying to automate using machine learning a little bit on the tracing a path, because, it's a path on a canvas. So we are trying to use some of that techniques to also automate path tracing and some of the other new activity types that I kind of got to learn from Dr. Ron and Dr. Murray. So I'm super excited about what we're doing. And I think we have 15 different activity types or group activities already pre-built. Um, um, and I think we have another 25 or so more to go. That kind of gives you a complete A&P package. And then we kind of do the same thing for biology. I think, Dr. Murray, you also have presented at NABT for biology, I'm presuming. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that's correct. I've been at NSTA, SCST, NABT, and probably the organization that I've presented the most with is the Human Anatomy and Physiology Society. But NABT is obviously in there too. And my area of expertise is mostly entry level. And so I work with high schools, I work with community colleges, and freshman students here at the University of Minnesota.
Gotcha. And so, yeah, we have a lot of these activity types already pre-built, and these also can be a part of your Lrnr course, which includes the OpenStax textbook, the Lrnr homework solution, as well as our live engagement tool with these group activities. We call it GILGA as an acronym. And you can also adopt these pre-built activities, change these to whatever you want. So it makes it easy for you. And this is, in the group activity mode, I felt like this was more fascinating for me as a product a development company to see something like this, where instead of just answering some random questions, you have a process-oriented approach to this, and that's what fascinated me and attracted me to what Dr. Murray and Dr. Ron were doing. Um, so if there's any Q&A questions, we'd love to answer those. And you could also book a personalized demo to see more about this. And we'll also be sharing this presentation. We'll make a shareable link so that all of you can have access to it. So having said that, is there any questions?
So can we hear questions, or they have to chat them?
I think they have to chat and
yes, yeah, it does have to be through the chat or Q&A. And we see a couple. We could, but something we do pretty often is if they seem like questions that others will have, we can just call them out. And you might be able to answer live. So I'd be glad to do that if that's helpful.
No, I'd like to entertain questions right now.
Yeah.
I think that's good.
Okay.
Okay, so I think that let's see, from the beginning on the it says around what time will the nurse book come out? I know nurses who could use that. Okay, so that's a question for you. Will there be a K through 12 physics textbook?
Cover that.
I meant nursing series. The progress is monitored real time. Yeah, the progress is monitored real time. So the first three questions are more for OpenStax, I guess. So Purnima, yeah, the questions are really monitored real time. The progress is monitored real time. You can literally change the mode where the instructor can completely take control and make sure. So I think Dr. Murray, from time to time, after every 15 minutes, he monitors the student activities, and if he figures out that every single group is having an issue in some question or some concept, so he can bring back the control, and everybody then starts focusing on his screen, and then he can talk about it. And then once he basically clarifies any doubts, then again he can convert the whole group live monitoring, I mean the classroom engagement session, into a free play mode, which means that students can now go back to whatever they were doing. So
Arvin, can I add to that?
Please go ahead.
So in my activities, in every activity that people use, what question is going to cause problems. And so it's just like, ooh, let's see what happens in question 4. And so I can see students' answers as they enter them real time, and I can see, what they're typing. And if I choose to, I can stop the class and then show student answers up on a screen. Here's group 3, here's group 5, what do we think? And we can use those kind of in real time as material for further discussion. But in my classroom, when we're doing a guided inquiry activity, I oscillate back and forth between the small groups, and then we stop, and then we say, okay, let's look at question 4. What'd you get? And currently I have whiteboards. My students have to write things on the whiteboard, write your answer to question 4, and I'm able to look around. But when the class is done, the whiteboards are all erased. Now I'm going to have a record of student responses. It's all going to be recorded, and I will have that, in my possession. And you could use it for test questions if you want, a common misanswer, a wrong answer. But that's going to be nice. I'm going to be able to kind of archive what happened in the classroom and even modify the curriculum for next time based on the student questions. But that's going to be a nice advantage.
Yeah, I think we have another question. from Purnima again, which is, does the software give feedback on incorrect answers? Yes, it does. So essentially, we can set up feedback for both right and wrong answers. We also can set up feedback for every single, let's say it's a multiple choice question, for every single distractor. So we have a lot of configurability, and the pre-built activities already come with those. So, and you can also build your activities. We're not telling you not to modify them and then make them your own, but it already comes with answers, and the software is capable of, or the platform is capable of doing that. We already do that with our homework solution. This is just it's in real time. That's all. And then I see a question from Jude. I'm sorry, I don't want to butcher your name. Yeah, Xerxes. Okay. How do we use this kind of system in an offline setting? I come from a school with limited access. So this is something that probably Dr. Murray can talk about.
So my activities typically are like 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes long. And I like that length because then we can kind of move on to another topic, we get closure. But I know some schools and some instructors have these activities lasting over multiple days. And I don't encourage that for freshman level. Maybe that works, well with the more advanced students. But I like shorter lessons, and so at the end of the day, we are done with this activity. But there's no reason you couldn't continue on. And Arvind, are we going to have an instructor author mode where instructors can alter the questions and add questions?
So the idea is that the pre-built activities act as a baseline. So if instructors want to modify those questions, modify the activities, we have several activity types. We have a lot of drawing activity types as well. So which I could show to you. I think, but you didn't answer Jude's question. She's asking, how do we use this kind of system in an offline setting?
Oh, so it can be used. Let's see. Well, the timing of it, I don't think you have to press a button to get it to start. But once it starts, it could be open for 24 hours. And so students could be working at home remotely and work together and say, okay, at 8 o'clock, let's do this activity. And so they would decide at 8 o'clock, 8 p.m. at night, they're all at their devices, and then they start up the activity and get through it. And we have talked about this, and I think it's in the feature. You could have a group size of 1. A group size of 1 sounds kind of odd, but then that's just homework. Students do the activity at home, and they just work through all the questions, and you'd get all the same information. But by making the group group size 1, you've in essence made a homework assignment. There's no reason they couldn't call each other, but they wouldn't be required to work together as a group to get it done. Does that sound accurate, Arvind?
Yeah, I think, even today, even in real time, you can actually do whatever other platforms do, where you can have real-time feedback from students, without a group. This is just on top of it. So on top of whatever classroom engagement tool we already have today, we have built this group mode where you can actually form groups, and these groups can be formed randomly, or you can actually call out saying that, okay, it's in a typical class, you'll have, tables and people are already sitting. If you just wanted to say, okay, you are group 1, you're group 2, they can join automatically, and then they can start collaborating. Or you can literally call people out based on their maybe engagement, or how well they've done in the last couple of classes. You can kind of combine different people into groups to get the best outcome, learning outcome for all of your students. So we have okay, so it's Sarah. So hi, Murray, this is Sarah from BTL. This system seems super awesome. Thank you. Can you have multiple instructors, TAs logged into instructor view at the same time? Good question. We don't have it yet, but we'll build it. We do have that for the homework solution. And since it's the software, literally we built it, in the last couple of months. So we will, or we built it on top of our student engagement tool. We will build, if anybody wants the multiple instructors to be logged into the same session. Today we can still log in, but it's not to the same session. If you want that, we'll make that happen.
So I know Sarah well. She has probably a small child sitting on her lap right now. She's on maternity leave, so congratulations, Sarah. But in her classroom, I believe she has about 120 students in an active learning classroom. And there are often two or maybe, well, probably two professors and then probably three, graduate students wandering around the room helping students as they, go through their activities. This is a higher level physiology class. But yeah, that brings up a good point. Can you have multiple instructors looking at the instructor view at the same time? There's no reason you can't. So I believe that we'll be able to address
Yeah,
that, later on.
that's
But that'd be useful.
yeah, definitely. I mean, we could enable that, in a week's time. We're good at product development, so that's actually a piece of cake. So can you explain the different options for grading? Huh. I do not understand the question.
Well,
Um,
I think I have that one. We have the traditional multiple choice, true and false kind of answers that can be graded by software very easily. But we also have short answer, essays, and drawings, which requires instructors to look at it, and actually to provide their own feedback. And so that's in there too. But I wish, maybe someday with AI that we could take a short answer, a mathematical solution and grade it, with the computer. But right now, there are questions that require instructors to evaluate. But many of the questions, if they're multiple choice, and there's others that we can have the software grade the homework or grade the activities. But there are other questions that still require your work. You have to look at them. Does that answer it?
Now, actually, let me just clarify that. There's only one question that you need to grade manually. Everything else is automated. Even tracing a path, we're actually we are using a machine learning algorithm to kind of look at the path, tracing the path that the student did, and compare that, and then try to auto grade it. Open-ended questions where it's short answer based, those are the ones that Dr. Murray is saying that needs to be manually graded. Rest of the activity types that we have are all they're all automatically graded. And in a month's time, we'll also have the tracer path to be automatically graded as well. So
very good.
And when you see these are not the only activity types. So in a diagram activity type, we have multiple activity types. So essentially, let me just show you a couple. So this is a diagram activity type where I created hotspots, and I'm expecting students to kind of, this is showing the pulmonary circuit. So they're asked to say, okay, mark the hotspots with the right numbers that indicates the pathway of the blood flows. So essentially, one, it starts from the heart, the right chamber, and then goes to the pulmonary artery, to the lungs, to the pulmonary veins, and back to the left heart. So they have to drag these, but you can always use click on target. So you can literally tell your students that, okay, instead of actually showing them the hotspot, make it very hard. Tell them, where would it go first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and they can click on it, or they can fill in the blanks, or they can make it in a drag and drop activity, or a drop down activity. So a single activity, once you author it, can morph into any of these activity types. And you as an instructor in real time can also ask the software to prompt you on which activity type you'd like to show this as. So there's a lot of flexibility for the instructor to figure out what activity type they want this activity to morph into, if that makes sense, depending on your students. So we do have the same thing with other activity types as well. Even though you see it as a multiple choice or a fill in the blank activity, it actually can become multiple activities or multiple activity types, if that makes sense. And all of this can be auto-graded. So let me just stop my screen sharing again, because otherwise I can't see, or maybe I still can see. Okay, great. Are there any other questions? Virtual labs. Are there virtual labs in Lrnr? Yes, we do have virtual labs. We have 23 virtual labs with biology and A&P, and we plan to build another 20 more because our CUNY grant program, the 3-year program ended, but we are continuing to build more virtual labs. We'll be more than happy to give you a demo if you're interested in that. We'll get back to you, Taryn. And I think question 9 is for OpenStax. I'll let OpenStax answer that question. Leslie Horita, can you review pricing again? I recall 40 per student, but also 80 per year, and I missed the difference between the two. Okay. So it's $40 per student per term, or it's $80 per year for all courses per student. So essentially, we have a library model. And with the library model, let's say that your department wants to use Lrnr in all of biology courses. So in that case, rather than us charging for every student, which is a typical publisher model, where you need to charge, you need to pay $40 for A&P and $40 for general biology, we want them to just pay us $40, and they have access to all the courses that you would like to use Lrnr for. And it's $80 per year, so that gives them even more benefit, because if some students are, if you're a quarter school, or if you actually have some summer terms, and if they're taking classes that use Lrnr, they're only paying us $80 for the whole year, and that covers all of Lrnr courses that are being used in your class, if that makes sense, or in your department. Amy answer, so this costs 20 to 40 student to be used with a free OpenStax text. Yeah, so the OpenStax text comes with the solution. So it's not just the activities. You have your classroom. So you have your classroom engagement tool with GILGA activities. You have your homework solution, which has A&P with 3D, cadaver, and so on. And please feel, we'll get in touch with you, Amy, to give you more information. And the OpenStax text is also integrated into our experience. So it's like you don't have to go back, tell your students, hey, go to openstax.org and try to look at the textbook there. Everything is kind of embedded into the platform. And Jude, again, on question 13, how long would session activities last? I think, Dr. Murray, you answered that question. It's typically about 15 minutes, you think?
For me, I like 15 minutes, maybe even 10 minutes. But there are activities that I have used that will take, a half hour, 45 minutes. And then with the high school instructors I've worked with quite a bit, they often will have 2 days. But I like closure at the end of the day. With the entry-level students I like them leaving the room, having completed 2 activities. And I often have 2 or 3 activities a day. But each activity is 10 minutes, so that's 30 minutes of group work and about 30 minutes of me doing kind of discussions and kind of administrative stuff. But every student in my class knows when they come to class, they're going to be working in groups for the majority or half the time. That's just what's expected.
Gotcha. I think we have a few more questions. So Rico, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. Is Lrnr only a web page based, or is it other apps? I think we are device agnostic. So we don't have an app as of yet. We are thinking about building one. But right now, because we are device agnostic, we actually build for the mobile device. So students can literally log in to Lrnr on their mobile devices, and we have a mobile interface. So it looks pretty cool. Because whatever we have developed, especially for live polling or classroom engagement, is mobile first. So we always build for a mobile form factor, and then we try to translate that to a desktop or a tablet. And it can be, when you say it can be finished offline, yeah, you can technically take your homework at home, but you still have to be connected, if that makes sense. So Purnima, yeah, please go ahead. So Purnima, yeah, go ahead, please.
We have a note from Ron saying that some of the questions are in the main chat. How can group activities be utilized and the courses still cover adequate content? Oh, there's a good question. Can you still cover the same amount of content when you're doing guided inquiry? And you will not cover the same amount of content in the classroom if you're doing guided inquiry. But I think everybody here knows that you can show 100 PowerPoint slides in a 45-minute class if you just keep clicking the button. Just keep clicking, and you can get through 100 slides. But here's another thing I think we all know. That doesn't mean the students learned anything. It means they viewed 100 slides. Well, they might have fallen asleep. But when you're doing active learning, you have to make some big time, pedagogy decisions. What do I want students doing in the classroom, and what do I want them doing at home? And for me, the phrase that I often use is fill the bucket at home. If we've got easy topics, I want them reading the book, I want them doing some homework, but the easy stuff I want them doing at home. When we come to class, I want good discussion. I want to mix it up in class. So fill the bucket at home, mix it up in the classroom. But in class, I want to, I do show PowerPoint slides. I will admit that, but I typically have about 10, and it's often just the models of the images of what we're doing with the discussions. But in class, I want students engaged in discussions. And that's enjoyable for me. It's more enjoyable for the students. But you're absolutely right. There are some politics as to what am I covering? What am I covering? How many slides is I able to show? But yeah, that's a decision you're going to have to make. Is there another question there?
I think I'm looking at some of the questions here saying assigning the different roles to the students in the group is randomized by the software, or is it at discretion of the instructor or the groups? So the groups, the roles of the students, they get rotated, right? They keep getting rotated. So we are building a config where you can rotate that for every model. You can rotate that for every session, or you can rotate that for every activity. Again, it's depending on the size of your class. I mean, the way I like to do it is if I am doing a session, let's say inside, outside, or circuits of the blood flow, I'd like every single student to get an opportunity to speak up and an opportunity to also participate. And especially if your group sizes are pretty big, your student class size is pretty big, of let's say 100 students, and then your group size then becomes 4 or 5 students, you would want the rotation to happen. So it's typically better to let the software rotate the roles for every single question. But if you feel that you have a smaller class size, you're a community college with 20, 30 students, and your group sizes are pretty tiny, there are only 2 students per group, then yeah, you can say that for this session, we're going to fix the speaker, which means the person who speaks up and the person who records the answers. So you are in a kind of control. You can control that experience. Okay, that is Ron. And then Rico again is, for example, some exercises. I'm not sure if there is such an example in a book, but for example, something that talks about baseball as an example could be substituted with tennis, or adding curriculum-based topics, or STH like that. I don't know what that means, but does that make sense to you?
I don't follow that question. Hey, we're down to our last couple minutes here. I don't know if we go dark at 11, but I have to leave at 11. But we should probably start some concluding comments.
Yeah, I think, well, the concluding comments are, thank you so much for your time. And if you have any more questions, we'll definitely look at all the chat, and we'll get back to you. If you've not answered your question, we definitely get back to you. The best thing to do is, if you are interested in learning more about what we have, please, we could have one of our team members connect with you, or you could simply go to lrnr.us/demo. You could schedule a demo, and I'd be more than happy to walk you through all the things that we have, because some of you have asked for virtual labs, some of you have asked for different activity types and configurabilities and so on and so forth. So I'd be more than happy to kind of walk you through the complete menu of things that you can do on top of Lrnr with GILGA. So thank you so much. Again, thank you, Dr. Ron, and thank you, Dr. Murray. And thank you, everybody, to join this webinar. And I'm hoping that this was pretty useful to you, and it's really fascinating for me as a product and as a product development company. I think this is really fascinating because we are all here vested to make students learn, and I think that this is definitely much better than whatever I've seen till now. To be quite honest, I mean, we've built a lot of products, but I feel that this group learning really changed the way we are thinking, and we are planning to build group activities for pretty much all the courses that we have ever developed with OpenStax. So having said that, thank you so much.